To Firstpost America, Americam, coming to you from our studios here in Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls the deadly car explosion in the heart of the capital that killed at least 12 people a conspiracy, vowing that those responsible will be brought to justice. Iran's deputy foreign minister says the country seeks a peaceful nuclear agreement with the United States to end a decades-long dispute, but will not compromise its national security. Gold prices rise to their highest levels in nearly 3 weeks, driven by growing expectations of another Federal Reserve rate cut in December and optimism over a possible end to the U.S. government shutdown. Russia says it foiled an Anglo-Ukrainian plot to hijack a military jet carrying a hypersonic missile, which the suspects allegedly planned to fly to Romania in what Moscow calls a large-scale provocation. And Britain's unemployment rate rises more than expected to 5% in the third quarter, its highest level since early 2021, adding pressure on the Labour government ahead of a key budget announcement on November 26. We begin with the air travel chaos that has deepened across the United States on Monday as President Donald Trump threatened to dock the pay of air traffic controllers who call in sick during the ongoing government shutdown. Now, the shutdown, the longest in U.S. history, has thrown the nation's aviation system into complete turmoil ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday, grounding thousands of flights, leaving workers unpaid, all while Washington struggles to break the deadlock. An additional 2,300 flights were canceled on Monday alone, adding to growing frustration among travelers already dealing with delays and disruptions. President Trump took to social media to warn that controllers who fail to show up for work will face what he called substantial docking of pay. He also promised a $10,000 bonus for those he describes as great patriots who continue working through the crisis. Now, the post came just after the Air Traffic Controllers Union was holding a press conference, hailing its members who continue working without pay, the unsung heroes of American aviation. The standoff has pushed the U.S. aviation system to its breaking point. In fact, one pilot's in-flight announcement has gone viral after he urged passengers on a flight from New York's LaGuardia Airport to call their senators and demand action. Meanwhile, the numbers simply keep climbing. Airlines have already scrapped another 1,100 flights scheduled for Tuesday. The cancellations also come on the heels of last week's announcement of a 10% reduction in flights at dozens of major airports due to what it called major staffing triggers. But even as the skies grow more chaotic, a glimmer of progress has emerged in Washington. On Monday, the Senate voted to advance a compromise bill that could temporarily reopen the government.
I know that the strain of these weeks has been immense, that you all have families, rent to meet, bills to pay, car and mortgage payments. And I'm grateful for all you have done to keep the Senate running. And for all that you do every day, shutdown or no shutdown, to serve the Senate and to serve our country. And with that, after 6 excruciating weeks, I will stop talking and let all of you get some rest.
The president applauded the move, saying that an end to the government shutdown would be very good.
What deal we're talking about, but if it's a deal I heard about, that's certainly, they want to change the deal a little bit, but I would say so. I think based on everything I'm hearing, they haven't changed anything, and we have support from enough Democrats, and we're going to be opening up our country. It's too bad it was closed, but we'll be opening up our country very quickly.
Democratic senators struck a deal with Senate Republicans, and if passed in the House of Representatives, it would end the longest U.S. government shutdown in American history. Since the work stoppage began on October 1st, over 1 million federal workers have gone unpaid, while vital government services and benefits have been disrupted. tentative agreement would reopen the government through January, restore funding for programs like SNAP, which helps over 42 million low-income Americans buy groceries, and even reverse some of the federal worker firings made during the shutdown. For now, the U.S. skies remain a big question mark. Travelers remain stranded, and thousands of aviation workers continue showing up to work without pay just to keep planes moving. Now, Washington is finally inching closer to reopening the government, and not a moment too soon for many foregoing much-needed paychecks and key government services. We stay in Washington as the White House has announced a partial suspension of sanctions on Syria following a historic meeting at the White House between President Donald Trump and Syrian President Ahmad Al-Sharaa. The talks on Monday marked the first summit between an American and Syrian leader since 1946, signaling a major shift in relations after more than a decade of isolation under the Assad regime, which collapsed in December of 2024, ending a brutal civil war that began back in 2011. Al-Sharaa, a former rebel commander once affiliated with Al-Qaeda, visits comes less than a year after the U.S. had placed a $10 million bounty on his head. However, since assuming office, he sought to rebuild Syria and restore international ties. Now, President Trump praised the Syrian leader during their meeting, describing him as a very strong leader from a very tough place. He said the United States wanted Syria to become a successful country and pledged to support its rebuilding efforts. Take a listen.
He's a very strong leader. He comes from a very tough place, and he's a tough guy. I liked him. I get along with him, the new president of Syria. And we'll do everything we can to make Syria successful, because that's part of the Middle East.
Now, following the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced a 180-day suspension of certain sanctions imposed under the 2019 Caesar Act, which targeted Syria's energy industry and foreign investment. However, the partial suspension excludes any transactions involving Russia or Iran, including the transfer of goods or technology from those countries. The U.S. Treasury Secretary said that the move was intended to give Syria a chance at greatness by supporting its reconstruction and holding harmful actors accountable. The White House also confirmed that Syria would now join the U.S.-led international coalition to combat the Islamic State, or IS group, becoming its 90th member. A senior U.S. official said the decision was finalized during the meeting and would strengthen joint counterterrorism efforts.
Syria, can we expect an announcement on a pact between Syria and Israel, or an announcement on them joining the NTI?
Yeah, you can expect some announcements on Syria. We want to see Syria become a country that's very successful, and I think this leader can do it. I really do. I think this leader can do it.
The agreement follows reports that Syria and the U.S. have also reached a political understanding on integrating the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces into the larger, wider Syrian army. The U.S. will also allow Syria to reopen its embassy here in Washington, which was closed for more than a decade. After the meeting, Al-Sharaa told Fox News that his past links to Al-Qaeda were a matter of history and that his government aimed to establish a geopolitical and economic partnership with Washington. He said Syria was now focused on peace and rebuilding.
I was only 19 years old, so I was a very young person, and it didn't have any decision-making power at that time, and I don't have anything to do with it. And Al-Qaeda was not present right then in my area. We talked about the president and the future. We talked about the investment opportunities in the future in Syria, and so that Syria is no longer looked at as a security threat.
President Trump said the U.S. was working with Israel on getting along with Syria, suggesting an announcement on a potential security arrangement which could follow. However, Syria's foreign ministry has not commented on the possibility of normalizing ties with Israel, though Al-Sharaa has previously said his government seeks stability along the southern border. And as U.S. officials hailed the White House meeting as the start of a new era in Middle East diplomacy, questions still remain over whether Syria's reintegration into the global order will truly hold, or if old divisions will soon resurface. And now to Asia, where a fragile peace deal is quickly unraveling. Thailand has suspended the implementation of a U.S.-mediated peace agreement with neighboring Cambodia after a landmine explosion injured several Thai soldiers near their shared border, escalating tensions between the two Southeast Asian countries that fought a brief war earlier this year.
What just happened with Thai soldiers stepping on a landmine is unacceptable. The Prime Minister supports everything the armed forces will do, and the joint declaration that we have been doing will stop.
The Thai armed forces confirmed that 4 soldiers were wounded when the anti-personnel mine detonated early Monday in Sisaket province, which borders Cambodia. In the statement, the Thai military said evidence suggested that the mine had been snuck in by removing barbed wire and newly planted on Thai soil. However, Cambodia's foreign ministry swiftly rejected the allegation, denying that its forces had laid new mines in the disputed zone.
The royal government of Cambodia categorically denies the allegations by Thailand that new landmines have been laid by Cambodia at the border. It is important to note that most minefields, dating back to Cambodia's civil wars of the 1970s and 1980s along the Cambodia-Thailand border, have not yet been fully cleared due to difficult terrain and the undemarcated status of certain border areas.
Now, following the incident, the Thai Prime Minister ordered an immediate suspension of all activities related to the peace accord signed with Cambodia, saying everything has to stop until there is clarity. However, he didn't specify what Thailand's demands were or how long the suspension would in fact last.
I will tell Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Defense Ministry that we will follow our desires. We thought that the security threat had eased, but it has not actually decreased. If it doesn't decrease, we cannot do anything.
In response, Cambodia's foreign ministry said it was gravely concerned by Thailand's decision and urged restraint. The ministry statement noted that the suspended deal included key provisions such as the removal of heavy weapons from border areas and the release of 18 Cambodian POWs currently held by Thailand. Now, the landmine incident comes just weeks after both nations signed an expanded ceasefire in Malaysia. The deal followed 5 days of heavy fighting in July that killed at least 48 people and displaced more than 300,000 civilians on both sides of the border. Blame is coming from each side for initiating the violence, which involved exchanges of both rockets and artillery fire. Meanwhile, the Trump administration hailed the truce as another example of the president's conflict resolution diplomacy. The ceasefire was signed with the support of Malaysia under the auspices of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. However, the fragile deal has faced multiple setbacks since its signing. Thai officials accuse Cambodia of obstructing mine clearance operations and breaching ceasefire terms, while Phnom Penh insists it remains committed to peace and has urged Bangkok to proceed with the planned release of the Cambodian prisoners. Now, analysts say the situation underscores how fragile the peace remains, but for now, Thailand's suspension of the truce leaves the future of the U.S. brokered deal and the uneasy calm along the border hanging in the balance. Forget freeze-dried meals and vacuum-sealed snacks. The next big breakthrough in space dining might come straight from thin air. As humanity dreams of walking on Mars and building bases on the moon, the European Space Agency is tackling one of space travel's biggest challenges: food. Enter Project Obi-Wan, a bold experiment that could turn air, microbes, and a hint of recycled resources into a protein-rich meal. The goal isn't just to feed astronauts, but to help them survive and thrive far from Earth. It's a taste of the future where dinner could quite literally be made out of nothing. Here's our report telling you more.
What will astronauts eat when they head to the moon or Mars? That question has puzzled scientists for decades. Because right now, food for the International Space Station is made on Earth and sent into orbit. It works for short missions. But sending supplies millions of kilometers away? Impossible. So, the European Space Agency is trying something extraordinary. It's called Project Hobiwan, short for hydrogen oxidizing bacteria in weightlessness as a source of nutrition. The goal is bold, to make food from thin air. At the heart of this idea is a powdered protein called solane. It's created by a Finnish company. Their technology uses microbes, air, and electricity to make a fine, protein-rich powder. No plants, no sunlight, just clever science. On Earth, the process already works, but space is a very different kitchen. Here, gases and liquids float. Nutrients move slowly. Reactions change. The biggest difference? The nitrogen source. On Earth, that comes from ammonia. In space, it will come from urea, a compound found in human urine. It may sound odd, but it's smart. It means astronauts can recycle their own waste to grow food. Nothing goes to waste in space, says a scientist working with the European Space Agency.
This project aims at developing a key resource which will allow us to improve human spaceflight's autonomy.
Over the next 8 months, experts will build and test the system on Earth. If it works, they will send it to the ISS for trials in microgravity. That's when the real test begins. And if successful, this would be a first in human history. Growing food in space without soil, plants, or sunlight. It's a step towards total independence in space travel, say scientists.
For human beings to carry out long missions on the Moon, or even one day to Mars, we'll need sustainable solutions. This is one of them.
The idea might sound futuristic, but it's rooted in simple logic: survival. Space is harsh, lonely, and resource scarce. Every drop and every molecule counts. So, the next time astronauts ask, "What's for dinner?" the answer might be, the air around you.
Yeah. Okay. And they made a chocolate gelato.
India's musical heartbeat is echoing across the world. A Delhi-based composer is taking the sounds of faith and festivity straight to the Grammys. The 12-track project has been nominated by the Grammy Awards in the Best Global Music Album category. In a milestone moment, it's competing alongside works by other Indians, making this year's Grammys nothing short of a proud showcase of Indian musical feats on the global stage. Here's our final report, taking you inside.
India's musical tradition has always echoed across ghats, temples, and now the Grammy ballots. Delhi-based composer Siddhant Bhatia is taking the divine resonance of the Mahakumbh straight to Los Angeles with Sounds of Kumbh. It's a 12-track sonic chronicle of last year's pilgrimage in India's Uttar Pradesh. It is a tribute to one of the world's largest spiritual gatherings. It is now nominated in the Best Global Music Album category at the 68th Grammy Awards. The album was created in collaboration with Network 18 and History TV 18. And what makes the moment more remarkable is that Sounds of Kumbh is going head-to-head with fellow Indians Anushka Shankar and the legendary Shakti band led by Shankar Mahadevan, hence marking an all-Indian face-off in one of the Grammy's most globally competitive categories. Bhatia, in an interview, describes the Sounds of Kumbh as a sonic memoir. The album weaves together field recordings from the sacred grounds of the Kumbh, temple bells ringing in the dawn, chants rising over the river, and the hum of millions gathering for the holy dip. Bhatia calls his nomination a big win for Indian spirituality. The project brought together over 50 global artists, including 5 Grammy winners. Among them were Canadian guitarist Jim Kimmer West and flautist Rob Cobb, both visiting India for the first time. And 2015's Grammy nominee Madhidas also lent his artistry to the album. The final mixing and mastering was done by 2010 Grammy winner P.A. Deepak. Siddhant Bhatia's other record, Cheyenne, also landed a second nomination in the Best Contemporary Instrumental Album category. This year's Grammy nominations read like a celebration of India's musical diversity. Anushka Shankar, a perennial favorite, scored 2 nominations, one for Chapter 3 We Return to Light for Best Global Music Album and another for her single Daybreak for Best Global Music Performance. Also in the race is Shakti's Mind Explosion, marking 5 decades of the iconic fusion group led by John McLaughlin and Zakir Hussain. The category for the nomination is Best Global Music Album. And their track, Srini's Dream, also received a nod for Best Global Music Performance. And completing the circle is Charu Suri, the Indo-American jazz composer who bagged a nod for Cheyenne in the Best Contemporary Instrumental Album category. While global names like Bad Bunny, Lady Gaga, Kendrick Lamar and Sabrina Carpenter headline mainstream categories, the Grammys' global music space this year unmistakably speaks in Indian rhythm and raga. The 68th Annual Grammy Awards will be held on February 1, 2026 in Los Angeles. And as Sounds of Kumbh travels from the banks of the Ganga to the bright lights of Los Angeles, it stands as a reminder that India's most sacred sounds can indeed become its most global ones.
That's going to do it for us today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We hope you have a great day, and we hope to see you right back here tomorrow. Thanks, everyone, for watching.